Soon we're going to have the Global Mercy coming online. You can't help but be moved by the things that you see here. That's life-changing and it's life-giving.
So welcome to Mercy Ships. I'm Anne Buckland, the Global Campaign Manager for Mercy Ships, and we are here on board the Global Mercy. We've got a studio set up in actually part of what is the hospital, and while the Global Mercy is here docked in Rotterdam for 2 weeks as part of the Come On Board season, we thought it would be a fabulous opportunity to speak to some of the amazing people that make up Mercy Ships. So with me in the studio today, I have the Managing Director of the Global Mercy, Joff Williams. Joff, how are you?
I'm doing well, Anne. Thank you for the invitation here today.
Perfect. Well, thank you for making time to speak to us. So let's start by just asking, what's your journey with Mercy Ships been like, or how did you get to this point?
How did we get to this point? If we rewind back a few decades, I was raised in the Salvation Army. My parents were officers in the Salvation Army, and so I grew up from very relatively young age with a sense of faith and action needing to be tied together. If we read scripture, James tells us faith without works is dead. You're not doing anything with it. So I had that example from a very early age in my family. Very grateful for that. And I also had some experience in Africa as well. I spent some time there, which really gave me an idea for what the healthcare needs of the world can look like. I was there during the AIDS epidemic in Zimbabwe in the 90s, and you start to get a sense for how the world works and see some different things through those experiences as opposed to my upbringing in the UK. And so seeing these things tied together, I think, positioned me and my thinking for something like Mercy Ships in the future. So when I met my wife, who is American, in the 2000s, we said, okay, what do you want to do with your life? And we talked about being involved in missions type work, medical missions type work overseas. She's a nurse, so she has a nursing background, and that sounded great. You know, we that appealed to both of us. But we weren't really sure what that looked like, how. We started our family and we were growing. We both had careers, and that was going great, going fine. And then we had an encounter with Dr. Gary Parker one day. Dr. Gary was staying at a venue it was the venue for a wedding that we were attending with some friends, but he was just staying at that place. And these friends, they knew us really well, and they said, you know that gentleman on the porch over there? That's Dr. Gary Parker, and we know you two. We know your interests. And so the bride and the groom introduced us to Dr. Gary.
Wow.
And we just sat on the porch and chatted with him for the whole wedding reception. We're the worst wedding guest friends ever. We didn't dance, didn't eat cake. We just sat and chatted with Dr. Gary for about an hour about Mercy Ships, the organization, who Mercy Ships is, what they do, why they do it, and got to know him and the organization a bit more. And we left that day thinking to ourselves, you know, we said we wanted to do something. What are we waiting for? Are we waiting for retirement? Are we waiting for some kind of, special things to fall into place? And we decided, no, it's now's the time. So we put in our applications to come and serve aboard. We were actually asked to go to serve at the headquarters in Texas for 5 years before we came to the ships. And so we've been in Texas for 5, nearly 6 years. And at that point, the organization asked if we would be willing to serve here aboard the Global Mercy, which we accepted, and we've been here since the start of December.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that look like, joining the Global Mercy, obviously with your family? Talk us through that.
Yeah, it's very different dynamic, certainly to having family ashore. There's some great things about it, and there's other things that you have to figure out. How do you navigate those things as a family? Some great things is community all the time. Many of us are away from our families, we're away from our friends ashore who we would know from our homes. But it creates an environment where you start to lean on one another. We have a family here, we have a community here, and so you work with the same people as you eat, as you play, as you worship, all of these things that you're around the same people all the time. And so we become each other's community, and that's great. The kids go to school with other kids, I'm working with other parents as well. And so that's a very unique part of ship living. But there's also challenges to that as well. You have to set healthy boundaries on some things. For example, I was invited to a lunch with some people today, and it sounded great. And I just had to say, you know what? Lunchtime is the time I sit down with my family, with my kids in the middle of the day and check in and see how they're doing. So you've got to set some of those things in place intentionally because of that same reason. You're around each other all the time.
Yeah.
The kids are doing great. They love it. They're in the academy, in the school, so they get a fully internationally accredited education. And my wife is looking forward to the hospital being online so she can lend her nursing skills there someday. And until then, she's happy doing whatever is needed around the ship at this point. And you know, the parents tend to take care of each other and help watch each other's kids when things are going on. So it's really great to have that support community. There's other challenges as well. Living on a ship, trying to get kids to get exercise and get off ship is important to make sure that they can run around and be kids as well. We're grateful we've got some great facilities aboard. We've on deck 11 and deck 10, we've got some open areas where the kids can play. They've got a ball court. It's wonderful. Playground, yeah, it's neat. But sometimes kids just need a little bit more space. My son loves to kick a football around, and so you've got to find opportunities to get off ship as well.
Amazing. And how old are your children, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, they are. My son is 11 and my daughter is 9.
Perfect. And so they've gone through, I want to actually focus on being a child as part of something like this, because obviously that's an experience that you've had. And so I'll come to that first and then talk about your children's transition. So I'm a new mum, and it's interesting. I still think through the question, do I volunteer at some point? And obviously children are a big part. If you've got children, then how do they play in that decision? So for you, firstly, as the son of missionaries, you say that seeing the AIDS epidemic impacted you. How was that? What did you feel that was different at that time?
It's hard to describe fully in words, something that we experienced. There's something experiential about these things. But if I were to describe it, there's some really clear differences between how I was living in the UK and then that experience in Africa. My dad was doing funerals non-stop at some point. You know, it seemed like, very frequently we were hearing of someone else that we know has passed away. And so that's just a very different dynamic to being in the UK. So you notice those things. Children are very observant, and they recognize those things. They see what's different, they feel what's different. People have different, parenting philosophies and strategy. For me personally, I think it's very important that mum and dad are stable. And if mum and dad feel stable, the family unit tends to be stable and feel stable. And so I was always grateful for that with my parents. And so it's really important for me and my wife that we maintain that here as well, that we have those healthy boundaries and we have stability, even though it is such a weird and strange thing to be living with your family on a ship and doing this. So it's important that you have those healthy dynamics so that you can enjoy all of the wonderful and beautiful things on the ship, of which there are very many.
That's amazing. And how have your children coped with the transition from States through to here?
Yeah, my children are relatively resilient at traveling. They have one set of family on one side of the Atlantic and another set of family on the other side of the Atlantic, so they got used to long flights relatively early. And of course, since we left our initial home in Washington State and moved to Texas, they've got used to just being away from family and being used to being in transition. So they're relatively resilient and good with that. There's still days where we have to remind ourselves, if they're showing us signs they need some space, we have to respect that. And you mentioned bringing them into the decision process as well. I think that's really important. Certainly when they reach a certain age and they're, healthy engagement in those things is good for the family. We just love having the kids in the decision process and saying, hey, we're thinking of doing this. What do you think about that? And listening to them as well. They're just as valid a member of our family unit as any one of us.
That's amazing. And actually, I was speaking to one of the captains the other day who was saying one of the things that stands Mercy Ships out from a normal kind of cargo vessel is the fact that you have so much life, you have so many families on board, and that really makes the culture here. So yeah, it's just really interesting to look into it.
Yeah.
For you yourself, obviously you had this amazing experience where you happened across Gary Parker in a hotel. When was that point when you knew, yes, okay, I want to give my life, for now to Mercy Ships? What did that look like?
It was really leaving that day. We got in the car at the end of the day, and there was just a real palpable sense that this was a time for a decision, a time for action, and we were being called to that. We prayed over these things many times, and we believe that God is faithful, and He answers prayer when we listen. It's not always in the way we expect. It's not always in the time we expect, and that's a good lesson for all of us all the time. And I'm still learning that one. Sometimes it looks different to what we expect. So for me, I was thinking, okay, Carrie's got medical skills. That's my wife. She's got medical and nursing skills. She can contribute. I'll do whatever. I'll swing a hammer. I don't care. Tell me what to do, and I'll try and be helpful. But the way things have turned out is they actually needed some of my skill sets in the organization as well. So some of these things just look different to what we expect sometimes. For us, maintaining a healthy balance of prayer and listening, paying attention to what's going on around us as well, being aware of those things, seeing how the whole family's doing. It's just, real life.
Perfect. And what was it in what Dr. Gary said that made you think, okay, this is Mercy Ships, not something else?
I'm not sure I could point to any single thing that he said. It was just getting into the car at the end of that day and realizing, what are we waiting for? Really, we talked about maybe doing something like Mercy Ships in retirement. Why are we waiting for that? It was a bit of a heart check, I think, for us. Maybe it was we felt more comfortable. We thought we'd be in a more comfortable place, and the children would have left the house by then. I'm so glad we didn't wait for that. I'm so glad we took the opportunity to say, we're ready now. We'll do what's needed now, whatever that looks like. And that led to us being able to come on board as a family. So I'm not sure I could say it was any one particular thing, but really a sense that God was just orchestrating and moving some things around, and here we were in the middle of it. Okay, what's the next best step? I found that in my faith, in my walk, it's very rare that I get to see around the corner. It's life is real. Sometimes unexpected things happen. So for me, it's about what's the next best right step. What do we have in front of us? There's a piece of scripture that says God's word is like a lamp to our feet, and one of our crew aboard, our academy principal, was saying, okay, think about that. It's not saying it's like a massive spotlight yards out ahead of us or miles out ahead of us, just around our feet. What's the next best step? What's the next right step? Okay, let's illuminate that and take a look. And we step out in faith and we see what happens, and we see some pretty amazing things happen. I'm very grateful for that.
So what do you think, so for someone who hasn't taken that journey, what do you think that's enabled? Or what are a couple of the moments that you think that wouldn't have happened had we not taken that decision? So what are a couple of things that you're grateful for?
Few things that I'm grateful for. Number one is people. You get to meet some amazing, incredible people in Mercy Ships. Truly, people who are giving of themselves to be here, have got world-class skill sets, some of the best in the world in some circumstances. Just incredible that I get to meet them and get to spend my time with them and get to know them. The ship is wonderful. I absolutely love the ship. I love the Africa Mercy as well, but it's the people who make it work, and it's the people who benefit. If our ships sit and they're empty and there's no patients and there are no crew on board, they are just pieces of steel doing nothing. They exist to change people, and we ourselves are changed aboard them as well. So for me, I would have missed out on people if I wouldn't have made that step. And secondly, and most importantly, I would have missed what God was doing. I don't always know what that looks like, Anne. I'm trying to figure that out one step at a time. Just as human and as everybody else, and more so in sometimes it feels. But I'm just trying to figure this out one step at a time. but I'm trying to see, God, what are you doing? What does that next step look like? How can we do that well? How can we do that faithfully? I'd hate to miss any of that. I really would.
Perfect. And we've talked a bit about your career, and now I do know a bit of your background, but just for anyone who's watching who isn't so sure. So your wife was a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to be a managing director? What did your career path look like before?
Sure. Yep. So I have a background and some education initially in internet and media studies, and so a blend of communication and technology, and that was great. I enjoyed it. I took my first jobs generally in media with technology, digital media, website development in the early web boom, and that was great. I enjoyed that. Eventually, that kind of led me into an IT track. I decided I need to be around people who really know this stuff well. I need to surround myself with people who are just better than me at this stuff. So that led to some other job changes eventually. I found myself working in roles where I didn't care so much about the technology anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I cared about people and what does technology do to make lives better for people. So we were planning out, business strategy for years out, and what technology changes do we need to make in order to make work better for people, in order to make outcomes better, and again, having impact on people. So I took a number of roles there, joined Mercy Ships, and continued down that path, and ultimately took me to a role where I got to meet essentially every business unit across the organization. I was working with every business unit in my role.
Mm-hmm.
It was great to experience what do they need, what matters to them, how do they function, how do they operate, and really help them realize what they needed to be successful. That was really helpful in preparation for the managing director role. I was initially preparing to come to the Global Mercy as the programs officer and help support the delivery of our programmatic activity in the field and handle the administrative side of that. And then the opportunity came to apply as the managing director, and I said, God, if this is something you want, then I'm willing to do it. If someone else is the best fit, then I will fully support them 100%, and just made myself available and was asked to serve in this capacity at the beginning of December.
Amazing. And how does it feel? Because you have quite a historic position, really. You're the first managing director of the Global Mercy. So, and how does it feel knowing that? And also, how does it feel seeing this ship come to life? She's arrived in Antwerp in the summer, has gone through a whole heap of equipping, but as we've seen kind of internally in Mercy Ships, and now the world is seeing more, things are starting to stack up to prepare her to do what she's ready to do. Mm-hmm. So what does this season feel like?
It feels busy, and it feels really busy, but it's a good sort of busy. There's all sorts of activity going on that is preparing us for that day when we get to Africa and we welcome our patients aboard, we welcome our training participants aboard. We're looking forward to this summer when we get to do that in Senegal. We're very pleased for that. So for me to be back in Africa, to see this ship in service, it's very exciting. But I honestly consider it a true privilege to be able to be here and start setting in place the culture that we want aboard the Global Mercy. I really do see that as my primary responsibility, setting a culture and environment in place where we are Mercy Ships, where we have our identity as an organization, where it's solid, where it's strong. And again, it's all about people. It really is. Yes, there's a lot of project work to do. There's systems to get up and stuff to install and infrastructure to be in place. And we will do those things. We'll get them done. But if we do those things, but we don't have the right people in the right place, if they're not equipped with what they need, if they're not empowered to operate how they need, and if we've forgotten who we are as an organization in the process, then we fail. And so while we're on my watch, we will not fail. We will go into Africa, we'll be ready to serve, and we will be Mercy Shippers.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a really good note to end it on. So thank you so much, Joff, for your time. It's really interesting speaking to you.
Thank you, Anne.